Young gobbos these days, all they do is bang around on their war drums. Whatever happened to good old-fashioned generic goblin noise?
Hey gang! Using the promo code MTGMudsta, all caps, will get you 10% off any order over $10 at Flipside Gaming. It'll also get you 10% off any orders of singles at Multizone. And it'll get you 10% off most products at Original Magic Art, with the exceptions of some paintings. If these fine sites don't have what you're looking for, you can also consider using my affiliate link when ordering from TCG Player. And if you'd like to join the Generic Goblin Gang to support this channel, there's a link to my Patreon in the description below. Just a heads up, but Flipside Gaming is going to be giving away a Zendikar Rising set booster box. The contest will run from August 31st all the way to September 25th, 2020. The typical rules apply of one entry per household. You'll be entered for your chance to win when you use my promo code on an order of $10 or more, or if you send Flipside Gaming a stamped, self-addressed envelope or postcard to the address found above. So good luck and have fun. Hey gang, and welcome back. Today's game was filmed at GAMERZ CO-OP, and I'm playing Vial, Smasher, and Tymna, keeping Nomad Outpost, Tainted Peak, Wear and Tear, Swords to Plowshares, Thematic Compass, Mind Stone, and Wild Ricochet. Kevin is playing Nikki B the Ravager, keeping Terminate, Cyclonic Rift, Bloodstained Mire, Thada Adele, Swamp, Ghost Quarter, and Scarab God. Eric is taking his Márton deck out for a spin again, playing 2 mountains, Reforge the Soul, Swiftfoot Boots, Risk Factor, Molten Birth, and a Beetleback Chief. Fred is playing his Scorpion God deck, keeping Desert the Fervent, Swamp, Rakdos Carnarium, Mountain, Azure Oddsmaker, Banewhip Punisher, and Cuts Ribbons. Kevin wins the die roll and starts us off. Kevin plays the first land for the game, a Bloodstained Mire. I play a tap Nomad Outpost, and at the end of my turn, Kevin loses 1 as he sacrifices the Mire. Eric plays a Mountain. Fred plays a tap Desert of the Fervent. Kevin finds a Steam Vents with his Bloodstained Mire and starts his turn. He draws and plays a Swamp. I play a Tainted Peak and pay 2 for Mind Stone. Eric plays a Mountain and casts his Swiftfoot Boots. Fred plays a Swamp. Kevin plays a land as well and passes. I play Cabal Coffers, which currently taps for nothing, and casts Talisman of Indulgence. I then tap my 2 mana rocks for a Thematic Compass and pass. Eric draws and plays a Mountain. He casts Molten Birth and flips or rolls or whatever you want to call it, calling it correctly, and puts the spell back to hand before making 2 tokens and passing. Fred plays a Mountain and casts a tapped Cryptolith Fragment. Kevin plays a tap Crumbling Necropolis, passing. I play a tap Sacred Foundry and take 1 damage, so I use my Talisman to help cast Tymna. I then pass to Eric. Eric plays Molten Rebirth again and calls it again correctly, making 2 more tokens and returning the spell to hand. He then hits Kevin with the original 2 tokens for 2 damage and passes. Fred plays a Grasping Dunes as his land for turn and plays out a Banewhip Punisher. As it enters, he gets to put a -1/-1 counter on one of Eric's tokens, and with the trigger on the stack, Kevin uses Terminate to take out Tymna. The spell and trigger then resolve, and Eric and I lose a creature, and Fred passes. Kevin plays a Dragonskull Summit and brings out Nicol Bolas, Ravager. His opponents each discard a card, and Kevin passes. I draw and play Battlefield Forge as my land for turn, and then just pass turn. Eric draws and casts Molten Birth once more. Even has worked so well for him, and continues to do so as he nails the roll and makes the tokens and returns the spell to hand. He passes, and at the end of turn, Fred has everyone lose 1 life from the fragment being tapped to help cast a Braid and target my compass. With the spell on the stack, once I gain priority, I activate the compass to go and find a basic, and then it gets destroyed. Fred plays a Mountain and casts Azure Oddsmaker in his main phase, which, if you didn't know, was my spoiler card for Battle Bond. He moves to combat, getting the Oddsmaker trigger, and discards a card to it, putting the trigger onto the Banewhip. He then hits me for 2 with the Banewhip and gets to draw 2 cards. In his second main phase, we all lose another life to the fragment as Fred casts Nest of Scarabs and passes to Kevin. Kevin draws and casts a Rakdos Signet. He then plays out Thada Adele, passing. I play a Swamp and pass. Eric draws and casts that sweet Molten Birth. He calls those sweet evens and hits it yet again, which makes me wonder what exactly is happening. He makes 2 more tokens and puts the spell back to hand, and Eric doesn't have a land to play, but who needs it with his luck, and he moves to discard down to 7. Fred untaps and draws. He goes to combat, discarding another card to the odds maker, and putting the trigger on the Bane Whip, and swings the Bane Whip at me once more. It connects for 2, and Fred draws 2. He then has the table lose 1 life by tapping his Fragment, and plays out Jaya Ballard. He upticks her, discarding up to 3 cards, deciding on 2, and then draws 2. With nothing else, he passes. Kevin plays a Luxury Suite, and swings Thada Adele at me. I tap my Nomad Outpost for a white, and use Swords to Plowshares on the Merfolk to stop her from letting Kevin steal my Soul Ring. Kevin gains the life, and then passes turn. I play a Mountain for turn and recast Tymna before passing to Eric. Eric draws and plays a Mountain. He does something different for once, playing out Beetleback Chief and gaining 2 Goblin tokens as it enters. He then passes to Fred. Fred has everyone lose 1 life in his main phase by tapping the Fragment and drops an Archfiend of Ifnir in his main phase. With the demon now on the field, he upticks Jaya Ballard, discarding the full 3 cards to her, which has the Ifnir give all of Fred's opponent's creatures 3 -1/-1 counters, and wiping away everything but Bolas. Before this resolves though, I use Wear and Tear to take out the Nest of Scarabs and the Fragment. He then casts his Talisman of Indulgence and goes to combat. He discards a card, giving the Bane Whip the Oddsmaker trigger again, and gets another Archfiend of Ifnir trigger. With the Archfiend trigger on the stack, Kevin overloads a Cyclonic Rift. We bounce all of our non-land permanents back to hand, and then resolve the Archfiend trigger, which puts the final -1/-1 counter needed on Bolas to take him out. Fred then passes turn. Kevin plays an island and casts the Scarab God, passing. I draw and play a tapped Mistful Plains. I recast the Talisman and Mind Stone, and bring up Vial Smasher finally before passing to Eric. Eric draws and plays a Mountain. He drops Emrakul's Hatcher, gaining 3 Eldrazi spawn tokens as it enters, and passes. Fred casts his Talisman, and then pays 3 mana for Kolgan's Monument, passing. Kevin draws and casts Search for Azcanta, passing. I untap, draw, and then go to combat, hitting Fred for 2 with Vial Smasher. Eric plays a Mountain, and recasts his Swift of Boots. He goes for the tried and true Molten Birth, and rolls for the spell. He sadly fails, and bins the spell after making the 2 tokens. Eric then hits me with the Hatcher, before passing turn. Fred brings back the Archfiend, and once it resolves, casts Faithless Looting. With the spell in the stack, I used Anguished Unmaking, losing 3 life to exile the Archfiend. I also get a Vial Smasher trigger from casting the spell, and roll to see who she'll hit. Vial Smasher decides that Kevin needs to take 3 for his overloaded Rift. Fred then moves to resolve the Faithless Looting, drawing 2 cards and discarding 2 cards after the demon gets exiled. He then loses 1 life from tapping the Talisman for 1 black mana, and drops a Ruthless Sniper. At the end of turn, Kevin uses the Scarab God's activated ability to reanimate Eric's Beetleback Chief. It comes in as a 4/4 zombie token, and as it enters, makes Kevin 2 1/1 Goblin tokens. On Kevin's upkeep, he resolves the Azcanta trigger first, looking at his top card and putting it into the graveyard. He then resolves the Scarab God trigger, having his opponents lose 1 life and scries 1. He bottoms the card and draws for turn. He plays a Morphic Pool as his land for turn, and casts Jace, Unraveler of Secrets. He upticks the Walker, scrying 1 and keeping it there and drawing it. Kevin then hits Fred with the Scarab God and passes. I untap and cast Primal Amulet in my main phase. I roll for Vial Smasher's trigger, and Fred takes 4 this time, and I then pass turn. Eric drops another Mountain for turn, and casts his general, Márton. He moves to equip him with the boots, and it resolves after he promises not to attack anyone this turn. Eric, a man of his word, then passes turn. Fred plays a tap Memorial to Folly in his main phase, and recasts the Banewhip Punisher from hand. It enters, giving the Scarab God a -1/-1 counter. As he passes turn, Kevin activates the Scarab God to steal one of Fred's creatures. Fred responds once he gains priority, sacrificing the Bane Whip to take out the Scarab God, and then sacrificing a Desert to the Scavenger Grounds to exile all graveyards once the Scarab God has gone to the yard and before Kevin puts it back to hand. Kevin uses his search trigger on his upkeep, binning the card, and drawing. He plays a Reflecting Pool, and then upticks Jace again. He scries one, bottoms it, and then draws a card. Bolas then comes back, making Kevin's opponents discard a card, and he passes turn. I draw, and crack my Mind Stone to draw another card. I cast Phyrexian Arena, rolling for Vial Smasher, and she's got a thing for Kevin right now, and deals 3 to him. I pass turn. Eric plays a tap Valakut and casts a Zealous Conscript, who once it resolves, steals the Nicol Bolas from Kevin. Moving to combat, Kevin decides to take out the Hatcher with a Grixis Charm, and Eric just goes all out in combat, tapping his board. His creatures, except for Márton, get pumped by +1/+1 for each other creature, meaning each gets a total of +7/+7. Fred makes a deal with Eric, letting him hit him for 1 with Márton if the rest don't go at him, and the rest go at Kevin. Kevin blocks what he can, but still gets taken out, partly because his commander is flying and he can't block that damage. In his second main phase, Eric then casts Final Fortune and takes another turn after this one. Eric's final turn has him untapping, and he draws. He casts Reforge the Soul in his main phase, making us discard our hands and draw a fresh 7. He plays a Mountain for turn, which has his Valakut becoming active and dealing 3 to Vial Smasher to take her out. At this point we realize that all Eric has to do really is swing, and Fred and I agree he's got the game in the bag, conceding to Eric. Game review time. So I think it's safe to say that a board wipe would have been good at almost any point in this game, especially the end game. No one seemed to draw into any, except for Kevin who had that Cyclonic Rift. I do think Eric was probably right in taking Kevin out first, since the Cyclonic Rift left him in the best position, and although we'd all stabilized, I think Kevin was probably the main threat. Fred was definitely the threat early on, but he was dealt with after he lost his board and had things bounce back to his hand multiple times. I think losing the Nest of Scarabs probably set him back further than he would admit, but I will commend him by saying that this is probably one of the best Rakdos discard decks that I've ever seen. A lot of his cards worked beautifully in tandem, and he was getting crazy amounts of value by upticking Jaya Ballard. Eric's Márton deck showed us just how scary that commander can be, and why Fred probably shouldn't have made that deal. I do think Eric was in the position to win either way though, since he was probably able to cast his commander on that final extra turn had he lost his commander the combat step before. Please be sure to tune in every Monday and Thursday at 11 AM Eastern Standard Time for a guaranteed new video. You can also follow me on Twitter at MTGMudsta. You can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/MTGMudsta. And lastly, you can check me out when I stream at twitch.tv/MTGMudsta. This video is brought to you in support by my patrons. If you're looking for a way to help out the channel, please be sure to visit the link below. Thank you all for watching this video, and don't forget, friends are just opponents you haven't eliminated yet.